everybody, it's me, Margaret, and I'm happy to say that I've seen a lot of people joining the Addi world with their Addi Express king size and Addi Express little personal machine. And I thought what I'd do is share some really important information that beginners need to know that I learned the hard way. A lot of this information is not out there. First of all, people say, how many rows did it take to do that project? It's not that simple. It depends on your yarn that you're choosing and the tension that you use when you're feeding it through your machine. And when you're measuring it on the machine, you have to remember to take into consideration the fact that it's stretched around the needles. And then, of course, it begins to relax as it goes down. So you can't just measure it and go, oh, that's how long my project will be, because, you know, that stretch factor messes everything up. What is going to follow this little intro here is a conglomeration of a few of my videos where I stumble through this process and show you. And the most important part of it, I think, is showing you a comparison between different types of worsted weight yarns. I know probably that in other countries DK weight is much more readily available, or at least it seems that way in my reading and video watching. But around here in the US, number 4 seems to be your basic catch-all weight. And keep in mind that all of this is talking about acrylics, your inexpensive brand acrylics. So with that information tucked in your brain, watch these next little collection of clips to see if you can learn from my mistakes to make your projects more of a success. Now, as you can see, you can't change the gauge on an Addi machine. These things are so far apart, and that's all you get. There's no choices on that. So the only thing you can do is change what type of yarn you use on the machines. Now, depending on what size yarn or the qualities the yarn has will determine what kind of hat you get. I mean, you'll see this is very floppy. Okay, it's only one layer. Didn't have a brim. It's a rolled brim. You'll see that the weave is very loose. I mean, you can see my fingers through there. Okay, it was a thinner yarn, somewhere close to a 3, though it called itself a 4. This is a red heart yarn, and you can see that this is a little thicker, but you can still kind of see through it. And again, I just used a rolled brim on this little zebra hat. This one is a double layer using Vanna's Choice, and Vanna's Choice is a little bit thicker than your typical 4 worsted acrylics. Now, when I say doubled, I mean I did a long tube and put half of it inside of this tube. Then I attached it and put a pom-pom on the top. But it is only one strand of fabric here, and it's a good thickness. I really like this one. Now, this is Karen Simply Soft, and it's very floppy. Okay, it cannot hold its shape. The thickness is good, but you just have to be prepared that the quality of this yarn, and when I say quality, I'm talking about descriptive words, not poor quality versus, you know, a high quality. I'm talking about its descriptions, the things that make it what it is. And this just happens to be a very soft yarn without a whole lot of body to it. And so it's just going to be floppy no matter, you know, how you look at it. This is doubled. Again, it was a long tube where I took one end and I stuffed it inside here and attached this on top. Now, how did I get that? Well, this is 2 strands of, it said a number 4 worsted, but you know how worsteds are. Different brands are actually different in their cylindrical width. This is a wonderful blog that did a comparison among number 4 worsteds. It's just a bunch of common types here. And she shows you, she lays them all out, and while you might be able to tell a slight difference in some of them, it's really not that noticeable until you begin working with them. Same hook size, but look at the difference in same pattern and same hook size, but you can see the difference in the finished product. And so here,
she did the same thing and then flattened the samples, and you can truly see the difference. For example, this is Bernat Satin here. Karen Simply Soft, no, Red Heart Soft is the brown, Karen Simply Soft is the blue. And this here is Vanna's Choice, which is what I think works beautifully the best on the Addi Express. And then this last one, what is it? Loops and Threads Impeccable. Look at the difference between these two. So it's really something to keep in mind when choosing your yarn and deciding whether you want to double your threads or not, even though it says they're number 4 worsteds.
So this one happened to be a little bit thinner than I had hoped, so I put 2 strands with it. It was one of those Big Lots yarns that you get. So using the 2 strands of this, I got a thickness. I did the same principle where I did a big long tube and stuffed one side in the other and then rolled it up. So it is a nice, cushy, warm, wonderful hat. Now I would love to be able to give you a simple Addi recipe for this hat, to say put your yarn on there and do 200 rows and poof, you have the perfect adult size hat. But it doesn't work like that, and it's all because of the yarn. And let me show you an example. I measured this. This hat fit me really well, and so I measured it, and it came out to be like something like 11 inches from here to here. And I thought, oh, okay, great. So I put some yarn on my machine, and I tried to measure best I could without stretching, and it came to 11 inches, but this is what I got. My lighting's not good, but you can see here the difference in the size of the hats. I have this on my measuring board here, and it's basically 4 inches different. However, I measured this when it was on the Addi, and I thought that it was right. Let's see, let's measure it. I did about 20 rows in a Red Heart Soft, or actually this is Deb Norville's Soft, which is very similar to Red Heart Soft. And it looks like I've got about, 2 1/4, 2 1/2 inches here. But remember, because it's stretched out, it's actually going to appear longer than that when we take it off the machine. So this should be about enough for a small brim. I don't know. I'm guessing as we go. We made it to 3 1/2 inches when it was stretched out off the machine. So that gives you an idea when you're planning that. 1, 2, 3, 4 inches different. So in order to make my second hat fit like this one, my cuff has to be this big. That's just not attractive. So I'm going to take it apart, which is the beauty of working with yarn craft. Make some improvements. I did 75 rows, thinking that I had it right. So what I'm going to do is 65 rows using my frogged stuff, one color, and 65 rows of the other color to make this one big long tube. I finished my big long tube, oops, my big long tube, and it still looks too long to me. I don't have any solutions, I don't have any answers. All I can tell you is that for me, this has been a trial and error, that you keep trying, you keep toughing it out. Okay, I'm still trying to figure this out. That was still too big. So I noticed that when I have these center pull balls, it creates absolutely zero, nada tension on when you pull, you know, when you're knitting. So I think I actually got a looser weave, believe it or not. And then I also think that because this one strand is not as thick as 2 of those other strands, I'm not getting as tight a weave. So therefore, you can't just measure because there's a stretch factor in there as well. So now I'm going to do it again. I did 65 rows last time. This time I'm going to try it at 55 rows. And let's see what I get. And when I'm talking about 55 rows, I mean in one color. That's where the fold will be. So it'll be 55 of blue, then another 55 of variegated, and we'll see what we come up with. Now don't laugh because I'm not the best hat model in the world, but this one turned out right, finally. So the moral of the story is that in order to size your hats properly on the Addi, or I would assume any knitting machine, you have to take into consideration the yarn that you're going to use. You can double a yarn. It takes it pretty well, I think, took it very well. And again, that probably depends upon the yarn. And then take into consideration the qualities of that yarn. Is it stretchy? Is it a tight weave? You know, cottons really don't stretch that much at all. You just really need to examine it and play with it. And then remember that this is an easy, fast way to make a hat. So if you mess up, no big deal. You just rip it out and start over again. So we've really not lost a thing but a little time. And when it comes to machine knitting, it is a little time. It's pretty quick. I guess that's all I have to say on that subject. So thanks.